Sanji vs Queen was one of the best fights during the entire Wano arc. With his new Kryptonian upgrade, Sanji is now strong enough to kick dinosaurs across islands. And we all know if Queen was skinny, he would be too famous. I'm going to go page by page and analyze the fight as thoroughly as possible. Some people have said that Queen is a bum, and that is definitely not true. He has shown some of the most impressive feats during the Wano arc, so even if he is not the greatest martial artist, we have to remember he is a formidable opponent. But unfortunately, Queen had to go up against the world's greatest superhero, Soba Mask. Alright, so starting off with chapter 10-15, we see Sanji coming in to save Chopper while he is carrying Zoro. Queen gets sent flying and Perospero gets caught in the crossfire and gets packed up, pretty easily might I add. And Queen is able to get up and is showing zero amounts of fatigue despite being hit by Chopper and even Marco. Queen doesn't seem to be taking any serious damage. Much like Kaido, the Calamities are extremely durable, so the Calamities do share that similarity with Kaido, and I think it makes a lot of sense. In chapters 10-17 to 10-19, Sanji and Queen seem to be pretty evenly matched, but Sanji is still a lot faster. And then Queen begins talking about Mads, and the fight doesn't really seem to be in anybody's favor at this point in the story. Now Sanji begins fighting both King and Queen and is quickly overwhelmed just like Marco was, but by the end of chapter 10-22, Zoro finally removes his bandages and he starts his battle against King, which leaves Queen to Sanji. Now in chapter 10-23, Queen explains that he and King have not taken any substantial damage and further emphasizes that the All-Stars have incredible amounts of endurance. Later on, Sanji and Queen begin to argue about Germa Tech, and Sanji uses a new technique, but it is blocked by Queen using armament haki. Now this is the first time Queen has used haki to defend himself during the entire arc, showing that Sanji's attacks are starting to actually hurt. And in chapter 10-28, Queen goes on to further express that Sanji's attacks are impressive. Even someone like Chopper was able to make Queen spit out blood, but he emphasizes that this attack did not work. So for him to go out of his way and compliment Sanji's kicks and use haki to defend himself means that this is the strongest attack he has been hit with so far during the raid, except for the Big Mom body slam, because that kind of knocked him out with like 2 hits, but whatever. Now ultimately what this actually means is that Sanji's attack should be stronger than Marco's, which I will probably talk about in another video. Now moving on to one of the best parts of the entire arc, we get to chapter 10-28 and we get to see Brachiosaurus hiss, which is when Queen separates his snake-like body from his outer shell and squeezes Sanji's body like a python. Queen explains that tons of armament haki masters have fallen victim to this technique, but I really want to explain why this statement is confusing. When speaking of armament haki masters, we often think of characters like Odin or Mihawk, and judging from the feats they've pulled off, it's safe to say they are drastically more powerful than Queen. So what exactly does Queen mean by armament haki masters? So my best guess is people like Virgo who have mastered armament haki to the point that they can coat their weapons and their entire bodies. However, in the grand scheme of things, while Virgo is definitely a master of armament haki, he's incredibly weak compared to someone like Queen. So this statement never really made sense to me, because an armament haki master is actually a very vague title because there's different levels of haki. So I would take this statement with a grain of salt. Now moving back to the fight, we see Queen accidentally attack himself with his light beams more than once, and this is actually the reason Sanji is able to escape. And to end the chapter, we see Sanji completely heal his body and he tanks a direct attack from Queen. Sanji has now awakened his Vinsmoke abilities and he has gained a ton of new buffs. Sanji realizes that he has now become just like his brothers, except unlike them, Sanji was able to retain his humanity. Now Sanji tries to escape in order to understand his new abilities and what it means for the future of the Straw Hats. He gets shot while trying to run away and he tanks the bullets very easily. Now many people have downplayed Sanji's durability in the past, but right now his durability is up there with the likes of King and maybe even Kaido. Just to put it into perspective, Sanji was not trying to defend himself and was able to tank a commander level attack and some bullets. Compared to other strong characters like Law, for example, who is clearly not bulletproof, the Vinsmokes have shown crazy feats of durability with their exoskeletons. But obviously, this does not make them invincible, and in chapter 10-31, Sanji emphasizes this point because he asks Zoro to kill him if things get out of hand. Now, Sanji uses Hell Memories for the first time since Fishman Island, and he blitzes Queen in his face. Now, this speed feat is actually pretty impressive because when fighting Marco, Queen was able to perceive his attacks even in base form, but Sanji is moving so fast that he appears to be invisible to the naked eye. I'm not sure why Queen didn't use observation haki, because it was confirmed that all the beast pirates have haki. Alright, now moving on to chapter 10-34, we see that Queen has all the Vinsmoke abilities in his own arsenal, and he's able to hit Sanji multiple times. Right now, a lot of people make it seem like after the abilities awaken, Sanji just starts one-shotting Queen, but this is really not true. After Sanji's power-up, he still fought Queen for a while, and I think many fans have downgraded this fight, but in all reality, this is a high difficulty fight. Queen is kind of a bum when it comes to combat, but one thing he is good at is getting getting hit, which is why this fight is lasting as long as it is, because Queen is very good at taking hits and he has a lot of endurance. Now, another thing we have to consider is that during the fight, Sanji was showing great fatigue. After using Winch Queen, Sanji is slammed through some walls, but he's able to land a counterattack and snap Queen's entire arm off. But afterwards, Sanji falls to the ground, breathing heavily, showing that this battle is straining him. And after using Flanchette Strike, Sanji explains to Queen that they are both getting exhausted because they have been fighting for a while. And it makes sense because Queen has been fighting multiple people, making ice viruses and stuff like that. And, you know, Sanji's been going around helping multiple different people. He let Black Maria beat him up. So, you know, Sanji himself is taking a lot of damage as well. So I think it's safe to say Sanji and Queen have both shown great levels of endurance during this entire arc. All right, now going off on a bit of a side note, I think based on Queen's knowledge, Sanji might actually be a Lunarian. He mentions Sanji's ability to conjure and control fire the same way as King. And now it seems just like King, Sanji can increase his speed and even has greater control of fire. Comparing this to King, in the start of the battle, his fire was ordinary. But once he covers his body in flames in a very similar way to Sanji, Zoro begins to compare his flames to magma, showing that King is able to increase the temperature of his flames just like Sanji. However, I think it's safe to say Sanji's fire is a lot hotter than King's, and I will talk about this in another video, but I thought it was worth mentioning in this video. Now, back to the fight. Queen copies Stealth Black, which is Sanji's invisible technique. Sanji quickly counters with his own invisibility, and unlike Queen, Sanji's actually able to do this because of sheer speed, which again proves he is faster than Marco, because again, Queen was able to perceive Marco the entire fight, whereas now he can't see Sanji directly in his face. So again, that boy Sanji is moving on some like Goku from Dragon Ball type shit. Alright, so Queen gets distracted by a random woman during this fight, and before attacking, Sanji explains that with his exoskeleton and arm and Haki combined, he will be able to withstand flames that are much hotter than before. And he also adds a very specific line that I think alludes to Kizaru. Sanji says with super speed, there will be a new level of weight and speed on his kicks. Back in Sabaody, Kizaru explains that speed is weight, and that is part of the reason Kizaru's physical attacks are so powerful, because not only is he a trained admiral, he's also hitting you at the speed of light. With Sanji's new abilities, it's not clear whether or not he's as fast as Kizaru, but it seems like he's getting very close. To end the fight, Sanji hits Queen with a barrage of new attacks, and they're all too fast for Queen to even counter. And Boof Burst sends Queen out of commission, and he actually gets sent flying off the island, and that is where this battle ends. Now in chapter 1035, we see Sanji speaking to the woman that Queen was attacking, and he passes out and she calls for help. Some people believe that Queen was getting one-shotted, which is just beyond insane. But anyway, Sanji was able to drop Queen in a high difficulty fight, and Queen may not be that great of a fighter, but he is still extremely durable, which is why it took Sanji so long to finally put him down. Now drop a comment down below if you think Sanji vs Queen was a top 10 fight during Wano, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.